Coming up 78 Denver, take one.
Steve. Marker.
Good morning. And let's see, we've got a full house. Let's see, I guess everybody has a place to sit or stand anyway. Let's see, so for the benefit of those watching online, I'll tell you that we're at our Hollywood location because it's CAS weekend, which is the awards day for the Cinema Audio Society. So we've got people in from all over. Just like to welcome them, and including Glenn Sanders from Zaxcom, who came in from New Jersey. So while he's here, we thought we'd get him to tell us about some of his new innovations. And as most people will know, Glenn Sanders and the Zaxcom company literally changed the way all of us work. They introduced file-based, hard disk-based recording, which is the way everyone works now. And they were leading the charge and still are. And consistent with that trend to innovate, they have 3 new products or features of products that they're going to tell us about today, including the Maxx mixer recorder, compact mixer recorder, the ZFR body pack recorder with the ability now to transmit confidence monitoring. They'll tell us about that. And possibly the more interesting of the 3 is a feature called NeverClip, which allows us to record at dynamic ranges that we haven't been able to do before. So we can make full use of the dynamic range, and post can set levels to where they need to be without us worrying about clipping and overloading. And it's one thing for production sound mixers to talk about that need, and we always wonder what happens after it leaves our hands. So to give us an idea of what Post thinks about the feature, we have Scott Wood from Avid and Pro Tools to give us his perspective. Right. So to tell us all about it, please make welcome Glenn Sanders from Zaxcom.
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out on a Saturday morning. I know that the production world can be difficult, and for you to come here and be a part of this, I am honored to have you here. Thank you. So we have a presentation set up this morning where we're going to go over, as Glenn said, a few of our products. We'll go over things in detail. We're going to get into NeverClip, and we're going to get a little technical. So if the conversation or the presentation gets a little beyond you, don't worry. We'll be available to answer questions at the end. This is Petey, who is visiting us today, and he's just here to kind of hang out and be my sidekick. So I'm sure he'll not have much to present this morning.
Is he a beta tester?
No. Let's save the dog jokes to the end. So if he decides he needs to go to the bathroom or something. Okay. Maybe we should take Petey down. He'll be okay?
Just giving him the eye.
Oh, okay. What do they say? No dogs or children? Okay, we'll see how this goes. So I just want to set a record as the first technical presentation with a live dog to make things a little more interesting. Okay, so without further ado, okay, here we go. So we're going to talk about our ZFR production sound system, which the ZFRs have been available for quite a while, but we have a new feature that these ZFRs now broadcast QC audio. We're going to talk about NeverClip, which is a function we're putting into our wireless, as well as our recorders. We'll talk about the new Maxx mixer recorder, which will be available soon. I will try to qualify the word soon at some point. It's not very far off. And our TRX742, which is our boom pole transmitter, which now has the ability to also broadcast quality QC audio. So if you're holding a boom pole that has the TRX742, you can actually wirelessly listen to it. And when I say wirelessly listen, it broadcasts to the sound card, but it also broadcasts to a receiver that you have. So it's quite an interesting new feature. Okay, I have to get used to hitting the right buttons. So without further ado, the ZFR production sound system. We have 3 ZFR recorders. We have the ZFR 100, which is our original pack, and we have 2 other recorders, provided my friend here allows me to take them. Okay. He's not very possessive of our gear. So this is a ZFR 300. It runs on 2 AA batteries. This is a ZFR 200, runs on 1 AA battery. So the packs are a little different in size, and essentially have the same features. So we'll go over that. You can record 96 hours of audio using a 16 gig memory card. So you can use this for multiple days without even erasing anything off the recorders. So recording time is quite good. We have an internal timecode reader generator in each pack. So these packs are jammed either through the mic connector or via Zaxnet. These have 2.4 gigahertz Zaxnet receivers and now have wireless QC monitoring because we've now activated the Zaxcom 2.4 gigahertz Zaxnet transmitters that they've had all along. So surprise to all the people that own ZFRs, with a software update, you now have the ability to broadcast audio to our monitor receiver. I'm scared to do this. Come on, bud. Okay. He's calmed down. So have I. So we have the ability to broadcast audio to these receivers. And these receivers are multi-channel. And this might not have been a good idea. But these receivers are multi-channel, so they can listen to multiple body packs. So if you're on a show, you can do a show without the traditional receivers and mixers. You can do it simply by putting these body pack recorders on people and using a ERX receiver to monitor them. So we'll talk more about that. We talked about the wireless QC capability. These also have Zaxnet remote control. So if you do have a bunch of these out there, you're able to utilize something like our Diva or our Nomad, and when those recorders go into record, these body packs also go into record. So you can have files on these body packs that match your production recorder. So when the recorder lays down a specific scene and take, these do as well. Of course, everything has matching time code to the production recorder. So you're able to just bring these into post and put them into your Avid or Pro Tools system and edit with them. So we'll get more into that certainly. And there are mono or stereo versions available on both of these transmitters. Okay. See what happens? Okay. So there's mono or stereo versions available for these. In the stereo versions, you can basically put 2 microphones on a single pack and have a stereo image just from the one pack. So it's a really neat thing, and there's no other pack that has stereo capability. So the advantages of this is the audio is hardwired quality. Well, why? Because it's hardwire. You get away from the problems that you have with wireless microphones. Wireless microphones, the FM style wireless microphones all have compander distortion, FM distortion. They have range issues. They have dropouts. Every FM system has a compander. Ours do not, because we are digital. We have digital modulation in our wireless microphones. So what you actually record on our recorders and record within the our body pack transmitters that record, the audio is identical quality, whether it be the internal recording or what is transmitted to our receiver and recorded on the production recorder. So that's another nice thing about what we do, if post-production is going to be mixing in a backup from one of our transmitters or audio from these packs, you have no quality difference. You know, we've heard, I traveled around this week and talked to post-production, and on some of the ADR stages and, you know, the work that they do in post-production, they actually have to maintain FM wireless microphones because they need to exactly match the compander quality of what the sound recordist used on stage. And with our system, you don't have to worry about that because you could just run a hard wire and that's the quality you're going to get here. The only thing you might need to do is just have the same lavalier microphone that they used on set to get that match. So it's easier to match a Zaxcom wireless. So audio quality is very good. Obviously, there's no range limitation because there's no RF. There's no RF issues. There's no RF interference issues. We can use an infinite number of these recorders. There's no limitation. The battery life is really quite good. Our recorder that has 2 batteries is good for about 7 hours running, you know, just continuously. You don't have to run it that way, but you know, you do get quite good battery life. And we do now have the wireless QC of audio, which when we're done, I'll invite you all to come up here. We have 2 receivers, and you can tune in audio from these 2 packs, as well as from our boom pole transmitter and from our Nomad recorder. So everything here is transmitting audio, or QC audio. The transmission from the Nomad happens to be higher power, and you can use that on set for a monitor for the director producer. It's our IFB system, but everything does work together. The other advantage of these packs is they're pretty low cost. The ZFR 300, the bigger pack, is about $1,000, and the smaller pack is about $900. So that's all you need to get a really good, high-quality track of audio versus a wireless microphone where you need a receiver and you need a mixer and what have you. By the way, I'm not advocating that you all take your wireless microphones and sell them off, okay? I think this is just something that allows you to do things you haven't been able to do before. And we'll get into the reasons that you would do these things. So ZFR workflow, you can use a lot of different Zaxcom sources as the timecode master for these things. We can use the Nomad, which broadcasts Zaxnet. Zaxnet is a combination of wireless control signals, IFB audio, and timecode. And the range on that, with just the antenna on the Nomad, is about 100 feet. Range can always be extended by using external antennas and amplifiers, but you get about 100 feet. With our IFB 100 transmitter, which is a standalone Zaxnet transmitter, that's about a 200-foot range. The ZFR recorders, these, okay, transmit to other ZFR recorders. So, and we'll get into the configuration, but if you're going timecode from this pack to timecode on this pack, it's about a 20-foot range. And you don't have to worry that when you go out of range, the timecode is going to change because these guys have their own timecode reader generators in them. So it just needs a little whiff of timecode, and the timecode is going to be perfect for quite a long time. So if you're out of range for an hour, you don't have to worry that the timecode is going to be off. And we'll talk more about timecode, certainly. Also, our TRX 900 transmitters, transmitter recorders, this would be one here. The range on this is also about 20 feet. So, again, when we say range is 20 feet, this is timecode range. You can also jam timecode through the mic connector on any of these products. You need a cable wired up properly to get the timecode down to a microphone level. But you could certainly take 2 packs, jam them, put them on people, and let them go. The interesting thing is that with these packs, the timecode that reads out on the display also reads out over this receiver. So as you QC people, you could actually not only listen to the audio, but look at the code and make sure the code is right. So that's a pretty cool, cool deal there. We have just got so much going on. It's insane. I'm not going to remember everything. But hopefully with the PowerPoint, I'll keep on track. Okay. ZFR workflow. So the idea being that the ZFR is going to jam timecode, and it'll do that when you switch it on. It can then be programmed to go into transmit mode for QC. So you're going to turn this on, and whatever, it's going to listen to any one of our devices that it's been pre-programmed to listen to. It's going to jam code, and then it's going to go into transmit mode so you can QC it when you want to QC it. It will receive QC audio from the ZFR with the ERX2. Actually, it will not, excuse me. You receive QC audio from the ZFR with the ERX2 or Nomad. So this is on, one of these are on the Talent. You utilize one of these receivers that you can walk around and you can QC. And you could also monitor audio through Nomad directly. Yes, Glenn?
Yeah, I wonder if you could explain what the term QC audio refers to.
Oh, sure. QC is quality control. So you use the receiver to listen to the quality of each one of the packs.
Right, I refer to it often as confidence monitoring, because it's a quality that you can verify the microphone is in proper place and is working.
Okay. 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 So the ZFR can be programmed to re-jam the code, and you could do it every minute, you can do it every 10 minutes, whatever you'd like to do. Idea being that if you're using time of day code or code that may be discontinuous, these can drop out of transmit mode and listen for time code and then go back into transmit mode. So maybe if you did every 5 minutes, you would have maybe a quarter-second blip where it goes, rejams, and then goes back into transmit mode. So it can't transmit and receive at the same time, but it doesn't need to. All it needs is a quick little listen to make sure that its timecode generator is accurate, and away you go. The thing about the timecode system is it's always real-time as far as the jamming goes. Okay? These things are going to be subframe accurate at all times, and you don't have to run around and jam things with a cable. All you have to do is turn these things on, and they're going to receive the time code, and they're going to jam, and when you get to post-production, it's going to be accurate, and things are going to drop right into a timeline. So with the system, you can attach to a camera the IFB-100. IFB-100 is used for many things, but it will output timecode, and it will output scratch track audio. So from a single ZFR source, it can output the audio. The RX timecode generator, again, always makes perfect timecode. Doesn't matter whether it's receiving on ZaxNet or not. So these packs, and I have some diagrams to show you, but these packs are used on different cameras, and it can, depending upon the camera, it can go into the timecode input of the camera if the camera has timecode capability itself. It can go to a linear timecode track, and post-production systems can read the linear timecode track, and they can then line things up on the timeline. And Scott will talk a little bit about that and the solutions that exist for doing that. So,
Does that have tri-level sync output for the time code?
no, it does not.
Okay.
Yeah, and many cameras don't have sync inputs either. I mean,
No, I
something like a
understand.
DSLR or what have you. So, okay. So we deliver micro SD cards directly from the ZFR recorders, and once they're delivered, post-production would copy WAV files, I'm sorry, or we can copy WAV files from the tracks, from the card, to alternate media and get that to post-production. And whether we deliver the SD cards directly or whether we deliver broadcast WAV files that you on location would transfer, all the files maintain the metadata. They maintain the timecode, the user bits, as well as the track names, because each one of the recorders has track name metadata in it. So, the metadata, which is so important these days for what we do, is always maintained in, on the recording here. Okay, so basic applications, as you can imagine, reality television. So many shows today, like Counting Cars and what have you, are based on putting people in a car, sending them away, putting them out with GoPro or other tiny little cameras, and these shows just do not lend themselves very well to wireless. You can just set these up and let the cars or let whoever go and let them come back, and you've got audio and you've got video, and it's all part of the changing dynamic of what you do and the type of programming that is now on television. Whether or not the content is what anyone wants to say is not my cup of tea, but what we've done is we've given you alternatives to the traditional production workflow that really suits itself to these new type of television shows that are out there. When you have any distance intensive application, meaning that wireless microphones can go 10 feet one day, and another day they can go 500 feet. But the distance, greater distances do not lend themselves to wireless microphones. So this recording application with the ZFR is great for that. And if you need a combination of the two, you can certainly utilize our wireless microphone transmitters with the built-in recording. Again, this is a lower cost way to do it. And now with the wireless QC, a little bit easier to put it on someone and say, okay, I hear the audio, it's great, I can see the time code, I know I'm recording, and go ahead, go do your thing. Airplane use, I don't know if anyone is aware, but on an airplane, you can't use wireless microphones. It's forbidden by the FAA. So a lot of you are shaking your heads, so you've probably been in that position. Yeah, okay. So utilizing either a wireless transmitter or the ZFR recorders, you would be in good shape. And when I say utilizing the wireless transmitter, we now allow the transmitter part to be shut off. So if you have our wireless transmitter hardware, you can simply go into a menu, shut off the transmitter, and just use the recording portion. And so that they don't throw you off the plane, you can unscrew the antenna. Okay, so that no one thinks you're transmitting to anything. You can show, look, I'm not using a receiver, not transmitting. Obviously, with this, without an antenna, you wouldn't have any questions. So we all hate questions, don't we? Military applications, anything you do with the military, they're not going to let you use a wireless microphone. I mean, especially if you're on one of their installations. So that, it's obviously a good thing for that. And interference-intensive environments, I mean, often we're operating close to, emitters of interference, whether it be radio, television, cell towers, whatever it happens to be. I mean, we often read on my favorite site, JW Sound. Big hand to Jeff Wexler back there, by the way. Big hand for giving us a wonderful forum to talk about the products that we all use and giving me the ability to go on there and elicit feedback. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but that's okay. All feedback is good, except the kind relating to actual audio. Okay, so interference-intensive applications are certainly out there, and a lot of DSLR multi-camera productions would really benefit from these packs where, people are going out, it's very low budget, and, they're trying to deal with a wireless microphone, and, a lot of people don't understand intermodulation, what frequency they should be on, how to set it up. With this, you switch it on, and you go. I mean, it's really very simple. Okay, so hardware timecode configurations, as I mentioned the range before, so I won't spend too much time on this. You can certainly go out with just 2 packs and have one be a timecode master, one be a timecode slave, and these 2 are going to jam their own code just by turning them on. It's that simple. And you can go and record multiple tracks and send them to post-production. Again, couldn't be simpler. If you have a Nomad recorder, Nomad is transmitting timecode. You can set these up to jam the code from Nomad, and then they'll go into transmit mode for QC audio. You can use our IFB100, which is a small transmitter box, about yo big, that again broadcasts timecode and audio. The Nomad recorder has that built in. It has the full functionality of that built in. IFB100 is a little higher power transmitter. I believe it's 100 milliwatts. The Nomad is 50 milliwatts. You can utilize a Diva with IFB100 to also transmit timecode to the system. When you use a Diva, just like the Nomad, if you put Diva in record, the recorders can go into record, they can go into stop mode. So they follow along, which is certainly great. And also, we now have the ability from our boom pole transmitter, we'll talk more about this later. I have it plugged into a mic here just because I can monitor the audio. But with this, we also broadcast Zaxnet now. So you could have this on a boom pole, and you're able to wear our receiver and actually listen to the boom pole directly. So if the sound card is down and you want to maybe, just go and see how things sound in certain places, you want to record some nat sound or whatever you want to do, you're able to do this with the TRX742. Very neat product. I'm going to conserve batteries for the moment on that. We'll talk more about this. So this is how you would transmit timecode, and of course we would use the. I can use this as a pointer. Look at that. That's a big microphone. You can utilize the ERX again for monitoring the quality of the packs, and you can also put it onto the camera to record timecode and scratch track audio. So, there's a lot of functionality. One piece just doesn't do one thing. Things tend to fit together kind of like Legos. I mean, they're building blocks, so you can make systems as big as you want. Did I go the wrong way? No. Well, did I? No. Right. So ZFR recorders, you can use it with existing wireless to, again, augment what you do, because some things you just absolutely need wireless. Maybe you need real-time monitoring, real-time mixing. But you can utilize ZFRs for, second unit for things where, again, where it makes sense to use it. And again, it's part of a complete production sound system of wireless mics, multi-track recorders, IFB and timecode distribution, and a healthy breakfast. Okay, so this is where I got creative and went on the web and stole pictures. So if you wanted, here's just a scenario of what you might do. If you had this on your boom, you might take the boom pole transmitter. It's going to broadcast scratch track audio to each one of these receivers that would be plugged into a camera. It would broadcast timecode to the talent packs, and it would also broadcast QC audio, each pack, and this would broadcast QC audio to someone who could monitor the situation. So as you see, there's not a tremendous amount of hardware going on here with this kind of system. Here's a system where you just have two body pack recorders. You have ERX receivers on the camera, and again, a single QC monitor. So again, it's more about using these things how you want. A system that might include a Nomad. You could have the Nomad broadcasting, monitor scratch track audio to cameras, and you could have the talent ZFRs broadcasting their monitor audio right to Nomad. The way Nomad is set up, right within the headphone matrix, you have the ability, if I can just do this, yeah. You have the ability, there's a crosspoint row on the matrix called Zaxnet, I think it is called, yeah, Zaxnet, ZNet. And if you fill in, and I know those in the back can't see, but anyway. But if you fill in the matrix, you can incorporate within your headphone monitoring, just by pressing a single button, the ability to monitor multiple packs. So everything is integrated in Nomad. Okay. And now, the most difficult part of my morning. Explaining NeverClip. For those of you who frequent JW Sound, you all understand that NeverClip has been quite the topic of discussion. And we're here this morning to make sure that NeverClip is understood in a way like it's never been understood before. So, without further ado, deliver more signal, less noise. Here we go. If there are questions on NeverClip, let's save it to the end. Okay, I'll go through it. We can go back. But here's where we have some fun. Why do we need NeverClip? Clipping is bad. Anyone disagree? Good. Limiters are just less bad. Why do we have limiters? Because we don't like clipping. Okay? In the past, sign of hands. How many people, when they record on location, have their limiters engaged on their inputs? I thought so. Let the record show practically the whole room raise their hands. Okay? We need limiters because without limiters, we can clip. If we clip, we're not looked at very nicely. Okay? Or hired again. No one wants to hear clipping. But people have gotten to the point where it's like, oh, don't worry, I have a limiter in. Well, a limiter is just a source of less distortion. Okay? No one wants limited audio. And we'll go through why we did what we did with NeverClip. Input compressors. Better, but not ideal. Your input limiter on your traditional recorder has a ratio of approximately 20 to 1. And it has a threshold maybe 2, 3 dB from clipping. So what you're going to do is you're going to basically, have audio that you're mixing. You're trying to mix it as hot as possible. And if you hit the limiter, you're going to have some limiter distortion. And again, these limiters are not adjustable. These limiters, what you get is what you get. Now here at Zaxcom, we put in soft knee compressors on all the inputs and all the outputs. Okay? These compressors, you can set them any way you want. And some people have 10 dB of threshold, so they kick in 10 dB before full scale. They have ratios, instead of 20 to 1, maybe they'll have 5 to 1. And they're very subtle, and they're much better than limiters, but still not a great solution, a better solution than a limiter. The biggest problem, ISO tracks do not help post-fixed limiter distortion. If you're hitting a limiter, that audio is limited in your mix. And you say, okay, well, I have an ISO track. Well, your ISO track is broken. It has limiter distortion too. So when they get there and they say, ooh, this mix is kind of messed up because this mic is limiting, we hear the pumping in there, can we fix it? And they go to the ISO track, and if they go to the ISO track at this point, because they know that if you're clipping your input, your ISO track is toast. Okay? So it's not helping you. So what we did is we came up with this NeverClip, which is a no-compromise solution. It saves time in post, a lot of time in post, and it improves audio quality. And I want to tell you, for the last 2 days, we've been traveling around to all the post houses that had time to see us, which was quite a few. We went to Todd AO, we went to Technicolor, and we said to them, how many times do you have to deal with audio that you have to fix because the limiter bit you? And they all said constantly. Okay? So, again, limiters are bad, just less bad than clipping. So, input gain control. Well, you can control input gain fast enough to eliminate clipping, which is why we need limiters. Because if you're dealing with multiple tracks, you're dealing with input trim pots, okay? You're trying to mix something. There is no way if someone starts to scream where you thought they were going to be whispering that you're going to be on that fast enough to take care of it. It's just impossible. You can lower your input gain to increase the headroom, but that lowers the dynamic range and adds noise to the audio. And we'll go through that. I mean, there's a balance between headroom and noise. And that's the balance that NeverClip eliminates. Okay? That's no longer a factor, and we'll show you how that is. Running input gain too hot causes limiter distortion because you're trying to give post-production as much dynamic range as you can, but you're trying to do it constantly to try to not hit the limiter. So for you, you're worried about, okay, is my fader just hot enough? Because, you know, if I don't give them enough signal, they're going to call me and they're going to say, you know, there's not enough dynamic range, we have to pull it up, and then we're hearing the noise. So, or the background is just too disturbing. So, you know, it's again, it's the other side of the problem. You either don't have enough dynamic range or you have too much noise. Or I should say enough headroom or you have too much noise. And let's look at the facts. If running lower input gain was a real fix, there'd be no use for a limiter. Why would anyone put a limiter in if you could just turn your gain down? Well, obviously, you can't do that, or we wouldn't be doing this. So again, with NeverClip, we have an ISO track benefit. Tracks not in the mix are not monitored, but may be used by post. So you're listening to your mix. You're laying down all these ISO tracks. You're not listening to them, okay? So you don't know if you have a problem on an ISO track because it may be potted down, but maybe in post-production they say, you know what? There's something on that track. We want that. Well, you know, you're giving them the ISO tracks, but you're not literally listening to those ISO tracks. So NeverClip keeps ISO tracks free from limiter distortion that you may not be aware of because you just can't listen to everything. So let's get into the good stuff. NeverClip uses two A to D converters to generate 137 dB of dynamic range. Okay? A microphone, a good microphone, might clip when you get to maybe 125, 130 dB dynamic range. You're going to clip your microphone before you clip the input of one of our recorders with NeverClip. So we have now eliminated the problem of clipping inputs. Okay? We can handle anything your microphone can put out. So that frees you up to do a lot of things. So we've eliminated the limiter use and the distortion associated with it. You have distortion-free ISO tracks. We have better isolation of dialogue from background. Because when you don't have a limiter, you're not crushing the sound into a limited dynamic range. If you don't do that, post-production is going to get your what we call NeverClip track. And that track is going to be a better track than anything you could generate if you're hitting a limiter. So post-production will love this. In fact, we did demonstrate this for many post-production mixers this last few days, and the response was phenomenal. I won't name names to protect the famous. Okay, we've eliminated input trim adjustments during a mix. You're going to see that our mixers don't have input trim pots on them because we simply don't need them. It is very easy to adjust input trim because it must be adjusted. When you go on location and you set up a microphone, you're going to set it up exactly as you would normally set up. And you're going to record exactly as you would record, but you're not going to have the fear of clipping, and you're not going to need to readjust the input trim in the middle of a scene. So we don't have those pots. So as a result, you can concentrate on mixing on the faders. not on pushing pots up and down and, trimming and what have you. And if you want to trim, it's as easy as just touching a fader and turning a pot, or an encoder in this case. So trimming something on our mixers is virtually instantaneous without the hassle of dealing with hidden pots. But again, you don't need it. So, we keep the noise floor with NeverClip as low as possible, because you're not dealing with this input trim thing, and you're not in post-production. If someone's speaking low, they're going to pull the gain up and hear a noise floor because of the dynamic range issues associated with analog recording. So I'll show you how NeverClip does that. And again, we're talking about substantial quality increase in isotracks for post-production. Okay, so how do we do NeverClip? What's the technology? What we do is we take a microphone input. That input goes into a microphone preamp, and the audio is actually split off and goes into 2 A to D converters. Each one of those A to D converters is producing about 117 dB dynamic range. That's fairly typical for a recorder, a field recorder. We take the output of those A to D converters and we put it into a digital signal processor, and that DSP combines the data together into a single audio channel. The method of combining is something that we have patent pending on, so we don't really discuss exactly how we take the bits and put them together. But the net result is simply that what we get is a signal that has 137 dB dynamic range. So we have effectively increased the dynamic range of the signal by 20 dB. And this added dynamic range allows us to take NeverClip to its next step of mixing and recording. Really? I thought I had another slide in there. Okay, that's interesting. All right, we'll go here and then we'll go back. I got out of order. So the NeverClip inputs that have 137 dB dynamic range go into a DSP-based audio mixer. Faders are used to mix that audio down to a mix track. That mix track allows you, or the mix track has all these inputs, and the faders reduce that dynamic range down to the proper dynamic range for your mix. And that mix is then sent out to your outputs and your primary card. But what we do is we take the isolated track, the 137 dB signal, and we put attenuation on it. And that attenuation can be anything from 6 to 24 dB. So we have 6 dB, 12 dB, 18, and 24 dB of attenuation. That attenuation gives us extra headroom for post-production. And we'll talk about the next slide that I'm scared to go to in a moment. And those tracks are then put onto what we call our mirror card, which also contains the mix. I mean, it's the audio that goes to post-production. But the great part about how we do this is the mix outputs, the primary card, the mirror card, everything contains a mix that has your normal mix dynamic range. So even though we are taking NeverClip and giving post-production these great tracks, nothing changes for you as far as delivering to post-production. You're going to give them a track and they're going to say, oh, okay, here's a mix track, great. If they go to the mirror card and they say, okay, we're going to go to those ISO tracks, that's when the fun begins. In a good way. Okay, let's go back. All right, here's where we're going to get technical. So what we have here is a representation of the bits of an audio word. An audio word has 24 bits in it. That audio word has 144 dB of dynamic range, which is defined by 6 dB per bit times 24 bits. So the standard audio word that we use has this dynamic range of 144, and our recorder, the Nomad, generates audio that has 137 dB of dynamic range. So it is quite easy to fit the NeverClip audio into the standard 24-bit word that is compatible with every post-production system in the world. So in this way, we're able to do something within the context of what is usable in post-production. So a standard audio word, now, first of all, a disclaimer. Because each of these bits represents 6 dB, my math is not exactly per bit. This is illustrative and not exact. So if I'm off 2 dB on something, it's intentional. Cut me a little slack. Okay. So a standard 20 dB headroom, okay, would have typically about 116 dB dynamic range. Let's talk about what we call the least significant bits here, bits 1 to 4. These bits are noise. Let me say that again. Bits 1 to 4 are noise. Every one of you is delivering noise in your audio. And that's where NeverClip works, because we can take advantage of the fact that there's literally 24 dB of unused area in the audio word. So the letter N is illustrating typical noise bits. The X's are illustrating average dynamic range, and the H's are demonstrating headroom. So typical audio that is peaking at around 0, the audio is going to be contained in these 16 bits. This is typical. If the audio goes above 0, it'll start to go into the headroom area, and these bits will start changing. So what we have here in a typical signal is about 96 dB average dynamic range plus 20 dB of headroom gives us 116 dB, which matches a typical 117 dB single A to D converter very well. So again, this blue illustrates just typical recorded audio, no NeverClip. The black is illustrating what we do with NeverClip. We're taking the signal, and in this illustration, we're adding 18 dB of additional headroom to it. So that's 3 bits. So we're able to utilize the noise bits by taking our 137 dB dynamic range signal and putting it in here so that we no longer have 4 bits of noise, because the converters that we use alone can't do it. They can't fill this with actual audio. But the dual A to D converter with the NeverClip can generate extra data bits where the noise would be. So this is actual audio contained here. And what we have, and I say 134 dB here just because of I'm trying to keep everything in the 6 dB increments. We have, again, 96 dB of average dynamic range, but we have 38 dB of headroom, because as you see, the number of bits for our typical audio easily fits inside the data word, and we have more dynamic range here so that instead of going 20 dB hotter before we clip, we can go, in this case, 38 dB hotter before we clip, okay? And keep in mind, this is the on-location side. We'll talk about the post side. So this is what NeverClip is generating. Let's talk about one more thing, just for illustrative purposes. Analog mix with internal recorder. If you were to use an analog mixer that had a recorder on it, and you said, okay, you know what, I need more dynamic range, I'll reduce the input gain. If you do that, what you're doing is basically reducing the average dynamic range down to 78 dB to add the extra 38 dB of headroom. So you can certainly do that. And in this case, you still get 116 dB dynamic range. But where you get messed up doing this is going to be shown to you by what happens in post. So again, this is an analog mixer where we simply turn down the input gain so that we have more headroom so we don't clip. And I think the key thing here is, though, that you can see by doing that, you can't, like NeverClip, you can't push data into the noise because the A to D converter has limited dynamic range. It can't generate any audio that would go into the noise area. So again, you have 78 dB dynamic range, and in this case, you do have 38 dB of headroom for a total of 116 dB. Now this is where it gets interesting. So let's say you go to post-production with these tracks. God knows they shouldn't end up there, but they will. So in the NeverClip situation, we have 18 dB of extra headroom, and all post-production needs to do to normalize the track, because let's say they want to use these ISO tracks, but let's say they don't need the additional headroom. All they need to do is add 18 dB of gain to the track, which is quite easy for them to do, and they will normalize the audio back to the original audio that they had. They're not adding any noise at all, and they're normalizing the track. Let's say, for argument's sake, that someone did go over, okay, where they needed that extra dynamic range. So post-production, rather than adding 18 dB, might only add 12 dB or 6 dB or whatever they want. And if they do that, they still end up with a signal that is extremely low noise, but yet fits within the dynamic range of what they need to do in post-production. So if you compare that to what you would get on the analog product, if you were to add 18 dB back in to normalize the headroom and the signal so that you had typical headroom, what you would get is you would be pulling the noise up because you're amplifying the whole signal, and instead of 4 bits of noise, you actually have 7 bits of noise. So what you've done by doing this is, with an analog product, with a recorder, you've actually pulled your noise floor up 18 dB, which is why doing it with an analog system just doesn't work. So in this way, utilizing the extra 4 dB, which is normally noise, and putting audio data there allows us to have post-production have this extra headroom, but never add extra noise to the signal. How'd I do? Okay. Thank you. I was worried about that. Okay. That's how we do it. Don't make me do that again.
Will you explain those 4 ends? Is that the 24 dB noise floor of the electronics in the audio chain, where the signal's coming in through the preamp and everything?
No, it's the noise floor in the A to D converter.
Okay.
Because the A to D
I got it.
Yeah. Now, there may be other noise involved in the system, okay, which I'm not speaking to. I'm speaking from an absolute, undeniable fact that limited dynamic range converters that have, let's say, 117, 120 dB dynamic range always put out bits of noise in the least significant bit.
Okay.
Hold on. I mean, this is what I call the dirty little secret of what we do. Because everyone runs around and says, oh, we have 24-bit audio, we're great. No, you're not. You're not. Because you can advertise 24-bit audio because you've got a 24-bit word. But look how many bits of noise are there. The key thing that you want to look for in the spec of anything is what's the dynamic range. If you have 120 dB dynamic range, that's better than 115. And more of those 24 bits are actual audio. So when someone says that their wireless microphone uses 24-bit technology, it's meaningless, okay? You want to know what the dynamic range is. So
Hey, Glenn, quick question online here. If you're borrowing 3 bits of noise for headroom, where does the noise actually end up? Can you discuss a little bit about that, or is that just...
If you're borrowing it, where does it end up? It's just lower.
Okay.
It doesn't go anywhere. Noise in a file is like a big empty room. There's just nothing there. It's space. And we can fill that space with actual audio. I don't know if that made any sense, but it's my answer.
Let's do more math.
You know,
Noise goes on the first 4 dithering noise that you do, doesn't it go in the 4 significant? What do you do with that?
well, we still have 1 bit for dithering.
So you use 1 rather than 4?
That's right. I mean, you know what? Dithering used to be really important when converters were only like 16 bits, because when they were so poor, you actually could hear something in there. But now that the converters are so much better, like 20, 30 dB better, dithering is really a concept that it just doesn't really apply very much anymore. But we still have a little 1 bit left for that, because we're 137 dB dynamic range, and there's a total of 144. So there's still 1 bit for that. So if someone says, oh, you have no dithering bits, well, yeah, we do actually have 1. Okay. Let me continue. We'll ask questions at the end. And actually, we're getting to the point where I'm going to take a little break, and we're going to put on our guest star for a moment. And it's not the dog. So, NeverClip headroom. Headroom is adjustable with NeverClip from 26, 32, 38, or 44 dB. If you're out there doing sound effects recording, you're doing gunshots, you're doing whatever, dial in 44 dB of extra headroom. If you're on a show and you're afraid someone's going to be whispering and then screaming, then I think, that probably 32 or 38 dB is plenty. So whatever headroom you want to use is up to your individual tastes. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're just here to give you the tools to do it.